Okay, so welcome to the next part of your prep week, which is so important. I cannot stress how important this video will be to you. So I have filmed this type of video multiple times, so I'm excited to do it in a unit like this. So this is your meal planning and prepping video, and I'm also going to touch upon some of the things that I've learned through doing this now for a year and a half in terms of strategies for cooking. So let's just delve right into it. So at this point, you should have watched the previous videos that showed you how to use your Beachbody On Demand and go into your program materials. If you have not watched that video, you need to make sure you go back and watch that video because it's so helpful for finding the materials that you need. If you're gonna do this right, and you should, you wanna set yourself up for success and don't just go into it kind of half-cocked and say, well, I know how to eat healthy, and just don't go the extra minute and a half and make sure you have all of the tools that you are being given. So part of doing this is kind of humbling yourself and realizing that you are coming into this for the support and the tools that are given to you, and they are the best tools that I've ever used. So do it right. Take the time to set yourself up for success so that you know what you're doing. So make sure you've read through your program materials. Every program that you do has a set of program materials for you. They are all individual to that workout program, whatever one you picked to complete. So every time you do a new program, whether this is your first one or your 10th one, always go through the program materials and make sure that you are understanding what it is the program expects of you in terms of nutrition to get your best results. Because the last thing you want to do is be 30 days into a program realizing you're getting average results because you're putting in average effort, right? So we want to do this right. So that being said, you're now sitting down to do your meal prep and planning portion. I cannot stress enough how vital meal planning and prepping is for this process. It is the one that people struggle with the most to wrap their minds around, but essentially is going to be, I think, long-term, the difference between success or failure. And everybody that I've worked with, including myself, once you start meal prepping, it's a little clumsy in the beginning, but once you start doing it and you realize how helpful it is throughout the work week, in terms of keeping you on track and making good choices, you realize that it's the only way to live. So at this point, for me, there are things corners that I've learned how to cut and how to make that meal prep time more effective, but I will never not meal prep, even if I'm a teacher, so if I'm home on the summer, my schedule gets a little wonky and I notice that I don't make as good choices. So I am still going to meal prep regardless of what's happening during the week. So let me talk you through your first steps. So you also should have watched the video about what you get in your meal prep, in your box when you start. So one of the first things that you should get is your Portion Fix book, or going to the program materials for your specific program. So you can do the virtual ones more and more. We're putting things virtually so that you always have it. Feel free to print those out. I am definitely a paper pencil kind of person. So for me, printing those out really helps me make sure that I'm, following it really well. I process the information better. So you should get some sort of material that explains how to set up your meal prep and what foods you should be eating on the program that you are doing. But for most of the programs, they're following portion guidelines, and that's really at the end of this, it's energy in, energy out kind of expenditure, but it tells you without having to overthink exactly how much food you should be eating, exactly the portions of the types of foods you should be eating. So it's really, really, really effective. So I'm just gonna show you for example. So in every program, it's gonna tell you either putting in by weight, by goals that you have. So if you're looking to build muscle, you're gonna follow a different set of portions than if you're looking to lose weight. The intensity of the program, it affects how much food you need to be eating and when and how often. So those ratios are specific to your goals and the program that you're doing. But for example, once you come up with the amount of containers that you are going to be eating for the program, how I tend to start is I write it on a piece of paper. So I don't know if you can see this, it's a little bright, but I wrote, okay, I'm supposed to have 4, green veggie containers and 4 red protein containers and 3 purple fruit containers, right? So I have all of my portions of what I need per day on the top of my piece of paper. It just helps me visualize where I'm going to be mapping out my food. So that's step 1. Know how many containers you are allowed to have. Know the portions of how much you are allowed to have of each type of food, okay? Then you can start mapping it out. So then I literally write on my piece of paper, because I told you I'm very visual and I just have to write it down. I write breakfast, snack, lunch, snack, dinner. Write it on my piece of paper. And then I start mapping out exactly the foods that I plan on eating. So you also want to make sure that when you're going through your program materials, you're looking at the types of foods that are in each food grouping, right? You want to know what's a vegetable and what's a carb. And I know that seems counterintuitive, oh, well, duh. But there are some programs where, for example, spaghetti squash. There are some programs it's a vegetable, there are some programs it's a carb. So you want to make sure that you are fairly well versed in finding, knowing where to find that information, as well as kind of having your quick list. We all have certain foods that we tend to eat a lot of. I know for me, I tend to kind of eat the same thing every week. I branch out occasionally if I'm getting bored, but for the most part, we don't, we eat pretty much the same thing every week. So you become pretty comfortable with the types of foods that you like. So make sure you know what foods you can eat and where they go in your portioning. And then find stuff that you enjoy and build your meals around that. That's why this is flexible. This is not about what you can't have. This is about what you can have and how to build that in for yourself. So for example, I, drive pretty far for work. So breakfast for me has to be really, really quick. So I am usually having my Shakeology for breakfast, which counts as one red container, 1 protein serving, and then I add a fruit to it. So I get one of my fruit servings in. I might add some almond butter, and that's a teaspoon. If I use almond milk, that's also a teaspoon. So you just want to really break it down and map it out. Like, what am I going to eat for breakfast every day this week? One of my tips is to keep, especially if this is your first program, especially if this is all new for you, my first tip for you is to keep your meals simple, keep your snacks simple, and just plan on eating that same thing for at least the first week or 2 until you really understand what you do and do not like. If you're hungry, if you're not hungry, you really want to be reflective those first couple weeks in that program and follow your nutrition as closely to the program as you can so that you really, really know where you're at. So if this is your first program, I would follow it to a T. If you're like, oh, I can't do this, or I don't like vegetables, eat them, okay? You're here because you're trying to seek change, so you need to change to do that, right? So a little tough love on that one. So try to find things that you enjoy. Obviously this is about sustainability and finding things that you enjoy so you can do them for the long haul. So find things that you enjoy and work them into your meal plan as best you can so that you're not feeling like you're giving up things, but you're actually gaining things. It also needs to be said that if you're not used to eating healthfully and you're cutting out large portions of what you've been eating, this might be a change for you, and to stick with it. Your taste buds and your cravings will change in that first 3 weeks if you stay consistent. So yes, you might be dealing with sugar withdrawal cravings. We've all been there. Yes, you might, be like, oh, I hate broccoli. But the more you eat it, the more you try to tweak things to be healthier, to, your body will respond to that. So give it some time. And just in some regards, you kind of need to make it work for a couple weeks until you get through that period of time. So hang in there. First 3 weeks is the hardest, but once you've done that, it's a habit and you are good to go. So give yourself that time to really commit to this and make it work. So getting back to how I map it out. So I find the things that I like. I find the things that will work for my schedule. So for breakfast, I usually have my Shakeology because I can drink it in the car. So that counts as a protein serving, and I can also have a carb with it if I know that I'm going to be hungry or I'm doing something different. I can have a piece of toast or, whatever. There's lots of options, and the recipes, you can Google recipes, you can go on Pinterest. We have some in our group. So if you're, want to have like a breakfast burrito, you can do that. Everything's about balance. So it's just a matter of balancing those containers so you're keeping within your portion limit but still full and happy and satiated, right? So for me, breakfast is on the go, so I do my shake. Around 10 o'clock, I get hungry again, right? Because we're supposed to eat every 2 to 3 hours. So I get hungry again around 10 o'clock and I have my first snack. I usually have either cottage cheese with tomatoes and cucumbers and basil, right? So that counts as a healthy, that counts as a protein and a vegetable container, right? So that's one. Or I will have my famous green protein pancakes, and those count as a protein, a carb, and a vegetable, right? So you can start to see how I'm building my map of the day, right? So that is what I will do for the whole day, right? So I'll start with breakfast, snack, lunch, snack, dinner, okay? And I pretty much will eat the same thing all week for breakfast, snack, lunch, and snack. It makes it easier to grocery shop. It makes it easier to plan. And so if I stick to those basic ingredients all week long, I'm doing a lot less meal prep. I'm setting myself up for success. I'm able to plan around that. And then if I have something going on, let's say I have an event, I know that this is what I have to work with, but I can tweak it, right? There's nothing unexpected happening. And that's where the consistency can come from, right? So especially in the beginning, and I'm doing this and I'm 2 years in almost, and I still do this every week because it helps me visualize and make sure I'm on the right track, right? So map that all out. And then when I get to the end of my day, I total it, right? So what I would do here is I would put a little math and I would make sure that I have those 4 proteins, those 4 greens, those 3 fruits. So that's where I make sure that this actually is accurate to my portions, okay? So that's how I start to meal prep, right? And once I have that written down, I can make my grocery list. So I usually do this right before I go grocery shopping. I sit down, I map out my meals, I come up with a few dinner recipes. So if my breakfast, snacks, and lunches are always the same, then I come up with slightly different dinner recipes. For my own sanity, I usually pick 3 and I just make sure I make double, right? So typical weeks for us, 2 nights of tacos, 2 nights of pizza, tortilla pizzas, and 2 nights of some sort of like a pasta with turkey meatballs, or maybe turkey meatloaf with cauliflower mashed potatoes, just depending on what I'm doing. But I plan those meals out too, so that there's flexibility. If I get home late, I can throw in pasta, it's quick. I commute really far, so I try to plan dinner accordingly so that it's really short cook time. If it's anything that's gonna be longer than 20 minutes to cook, I do it on the weekend. So for example, if I'm cooking spaghetti squash for my pasta night, or sometimes I put taco meat on spaghetti squash, which is awesome. If you haven't done that, you should do that. But spaghetti squash is a root vegetable. It takes like 45 minutes to cook. I cook it on the weekend, and then I can just pull from it during the week. If I'm making meatloaf, I make it on the weekend, so it's a reheat job later in the week. So you really want to think about when you're planning this out and you're doing your grocery list, you also want to think, okay, what can I cook ahead of time? And my general rule is if it's more than 20 minutes, I cook it on the weekends. And I will double batch things. I will make my oven like work for me. Like it works like hell on the weekends. So if I'm making meatloaf, spaghetti squash, I will cook them at the same time. Like I'll just put them all in together. If I'm making carrot muffins or something like that for a snack, I will cook all of it all together. So my meal prep at this point, because I'm multitasking, I'll have the crock pot going while my oven's going. So yes, it's a bit of a commitment, but we're down to 2 hours, an hour to get it all done, and I'm set for the week. Okay, another tip that my husband and I do is we make all of our lunches on the weekends. So like we eat salads, we just enjoy salads, we eat those for lunch. It's a great way to get a lot of your green containers in, because you are eating a lot of vegetables on this. So if you don't pay attention and you don't build those into your day, you're gonna end up at dinner, because it's with a lot of vegetables, and that's not what you want. You wanna space it out. You wanna make sure that nutritionally you're getting little bits of the food groups everywhere, because at some point your body can't absorb any more nutrition. So if you're just gonna be like, well, I'll eat all 5 vegetable containers at dinner, 1, you're gonna feel sick, and 2, there's only so much nutrition your body will absorb before it goes out of your body, right? So you really want to space things apart as best you can, and that's something that I've learned. It took me longer to learn, so I'm imparting that information on you now as somebody who's been there. My digestion, my results, my digestion, and my energy level were better when I started spacing things out more effectively. So that's just another tip that, coming back from it, that I have. So that's how I start meal prepping, planning. And then on the weekends, I cook as much as I can. I make a ton of protein pancakes. Like I make 40 of them because Morgan eats them, I eat them, Troy eats them. So I cook a ton of those. They're good for the week. And so that's really just what I do. So that's how I plan out my meals. That's how I plan out my containers and my portions. I don't eat out of the portion containers. I use them as basically measurement scoops. So you can also use measuring cups for this as well. You can make sure you get your Shakeology in every day. It is the best source of nutrition for you and stuff that we would never ever eat normally, even if you eat a lot of vegetables. There is stuff in here that you would never get on your own. So this is basically like taking a multivitamin, and it's going to help you throughout the day, stay satiated, as well as fight cravings literally from like the mineral level and the cellular level. Your body's going to not need the things that you crave, especially around that 2:00 mark. I know my energy starts to dip. So this is a great, 2-3 p.m. snack to kind of kick back for yourself. If you're doing any of the supplements or the performance lines, they do not count as your containers. So these are extras basically, but they don't count against your portions. So even though like this is raw protein, it's recovery, which works amazing for your muscles. This does not count as a protein. It's just additional protein. So any of the supplements or the boosts, the focus, the green energy, those are all just like extra things that don't count in your meal planning. You don't have to plan to lose your containers for using them, right? They're just additional stuff. So Energize is like just the best for me. If you work out early in the morning, in the evening, honestly, I started drinking it like on the weekends to clean my house and get a lot of crap done. So if you haven't tried some of these, you don't have to be worried about them coming out of your containers. Those are additional things that are just like freebies, I guess, but they really do make a difference. So I highly encourage you, if you haven't tried them yet, to give those a shot. But it's nice because you don't have to build those into your containers. The Shakeology is one red and that's it. So you want to keep your nutrition high, and that will help your whole body do better. One final thing, when you're looking at your food lists, something to also keep in mind: the top part of your lists, the first half, is the most nutrition dense. So if you're really looking for the best results in the quickest amount of time, you want to stick to the top of those food lists. So for example, if you're in the carb list, you'll see at the end has like tortillas. You can have a tortilla. I'm not saying you can't, but you don't want to use all of your yellow containers and have 3 tortillas a day, right? So you want to try to stick to the top of the list of all of the foods. They're going to be the most nutrition dense, the most effective for your body, and you will see results faster if you stick to the top of the list. So that's just another little trick that I've learned along the way. But that's it. So that's your meal prep help and your meal guides. If you have any questions, reach out to the group, reach out to your coach. We've done it, so we can give you the tips and the tricks to cut off some of that time that I spent trying to figure it out myself. And everybody's doing a great job, and it's definitely a learn by doing type thing. So don't overthink it. Set yourself up for success. Just start doing. Fail forward. So if you have a bad week and you're like, that did not work, that's okay. You're either learning in it or you're not, right? So even if you have a bad week, it's not considered a failure unless you don't learn from it. So all you have to do is reflect on that next week and do better, right? So you're only trying to be better than you were yesterday, and that is it. So I hope you guys are doing well so far, and you're enjoying your prep week, and you're getting your workouts in, and you're getting your shake in, and you're starting to feel amazing. It's right around this time that people start to kind of go, oh, this is like for real. Like I'm feeling really good. So lean into that, lean into the community. That's the special sauce of this whole thing is our community. So don't shy away from asking questions and getting to know people. That's what's going to make you successful in the long run. So thank you for joining us, and we'll see you in the next video.